My daughter changed my life insurance beneficiary 4 days before my open-heart surgery. She had access to my account because I gave it to her. She changed it to herself, 100%. She did not tell me. I found out from a letter. If someone you trusted ever calculated what you were worth before you were gone, stay with me. If you're not subscribed yet, now would be a good time. These stories aren't for everyone. The letter arrived on a Tuesday 8 days after my surgery. I had been home from Vanderbilt 4 days. I was moving slow, sleeping in the recliner because lying flat still pulled at the sternum. Eating soup Beverly would have made better. My son Russell had been staying in the guest room, which I appreciated more than I told him. The letter was from Keystone Life Insurance. It confirmed a beneficiary change on policy number KL 447109. Effective November 14th. Primary beneficiary, Cassandra Lynn Holloway. 100%. I read it standing at the kitchen counter in my robe. November 14th was a Thursday. My surgery had been November 18th. I put the letter flat on the table and sat down. I didn't move for a long time. If you've ever opened a letter that changed how you see someone forever, stay with me, because that Thursday night wasn't an accident. And neither was what happened next. My name is Gerald Marsh. I go by Jerry, 71 years old, Nashville born, retired building contractor. I built residential and light commercial structures across Middle Tennessee for 38 years. Houses, additions, a few small office buildings, 2 churches. I ran a crew of 8 to 14 men depending on the season. I retired at 68 with a clean reputation and a business I sold to my foreman, a man named Dave Pruitt, who still sends me a Christmas card every year. Beverly and I were married for 43 years. She passed from ovarian cancer 22 months before the letter arrived. The surgery was for my heart, unrelated to her illness, a slow problem finally demanding attention. We have 2 children. Cassie is 44, lives in Brentwood, married to Todd Holloway. They have 3 children and a life that requires things to keep working in their favor. Russell is 40, East Nashville, quieter than Cassie, less present, more honest. I say this without sentiment. Cassie has always been comfortable calculating outcomes. She calculated this one wrong. I want to be fair, there were years when we were close. Taking her to job sites on Saturdays when she was small. The way she'd carry a measuring tape around and pretend to use it. Beverly has a photograph somewhere. I couldn't look at it for a long time after. I still haven't moved it. The insurance policy was for $750,000. After Beverly passed, I split it equally, $375,000 to each child. Simple. The way Beverly would have wanted it. That was the policy Cassie changed. Beverly was a kindergarten teacher for 27 years. She knew her children. She knew Cassie the way a woman knows a river, its patterns, its currents, the places where it moves faster than it looks. Near the end, the medication made her candid. Cassie loves you, Jerry. But she also loves what you represent. I don't think she knows the difference. She'll be fine, Beverly said. But pay attention. She died 6 days later. When the surgery was scheduled and Cassie offered to help, I thought, this is the love Beverly was talking about, practical love. Cassie's kind. I was wrong about what Beverly had meant. The bypass was scheduled for November 18th at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. 3 vessels. The cardiologist, Dr. Owen Greyer, had been straightforward with me. The procedure was considered routine for someone my age and health profile. But it was still open-heart surgery, and I should be prepared for a recovery of 6 to 8 weeks. I was not afraid, exactly. I was practical about it. I updated my estate documents in October. I reviewed my will with my attorney Calvin Reed, made a small change regarding a piece of property in Dixon County, and left the rest as it was. Calvin had been handling my legal work for 16 years. He is methodical and unhurried, which suits me. I told Cassie about the surgery in late September. She drove up from Brentwood the following weekend. She sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad. I noticed the legal pad, and asked organized questions. What hospital? Which doctor? What was the recovery timeline? Who would be with me? Whether I had thought about who would handle things if anything went wrong. I understand now that she had already formed her conclusion before she sat down. The questions were not curiosity. They were confirmation. And your financial accounts, she said. Medical bills, the insurance coordination. Would it help if I had access to the online portal, just so I can handle things from my end, if you're not up to navigating it? It was a reasonable request. She framed it reasonably, which is how Cassie frames everything. I gave her the login credentials for the insurance company's online portal, Medicare coordination, claims tracking, the health insurance dashboard. I did not give her authority to make changes to the life insurance policy. She found that section anyway. Keystone Life uses a single online portal for all policy management. Health, life, supplemental. When I gave Cassie access to the health and Medicare coordination section, I gave her my master credentials. The same credentials accessed the life insurance policy. On November 14th, a Thursday 4 days before my surgery, Cassie logged into my account at 9:47 p.m. I know the time because Calvin requested the access log as part of the investigation. She navigated to the life insurance section, opened the beneficiary management page, removed Russell's name and my existing allocation, and entered her own information as sole primary beneficiary at 100%. The change processed automatically. Keystone sent a confirmation letter to my address, standard procedure for any beneficiary change. The letter was mailed November 15th. It arrived while I was in the hospital. By the time I read it, I had been home 4 days. Russell had been staying with me, doing the grocery runs and the pharmacy pickups, and the things that needed doing. He had been there the day the mail came. He hadn't noticed the Keystone envelope because he didn't know to look for it. She had timed it, I think, so that the confirmation would arrive while I was either in surgery or recovering, when I would be least likely to be alert, when Russell would be managing me rather than managing my paperwork. She had thought it through. I didn't call anyone that morning. I put the letter in the drawer of the side table near the recliner. I sat with it for a day. I want to be honest about this. I spent 24 hours trying to find an explanation that wasn't what I knew it was. Maybe she had misunderstood something. Maybe the portal had an error. Maybe there was a framing I wasn't seeing. I am a practical man and I have run crews and managed contracts and handled disputes. And I know that the first explanation you reach for is almost never the correct one. You look at the evidence before you conclude. The evidence, when I looked at it carefully, did not have another explanation. She had accessed my account 4 days before I was scheduled for open-heart surgery. She had changed the beneficiary away from her brother and to herself exclusively. She had not mentioned it before the surgery. She had not mentioned it during my hospitalization. She had visited me in the recovery room on November 19th, brought me a get-well card signed by her children, and said nothing. On the 24th, she had called to ask how I was healing. She had said nothing. I took the letter out of the drawer. I called Calvin. If you think this was just desperation, keep listening. And if you value stories that don't sugarcoat reality, hit like. It tells me to keep telling them. Calvin Reed has been my attorney since I was 55 years old. He is 64 now, practices out of an office on Church Street downtown, and has the quality of listening fully before he responds. He does not perform calm. He simply is calm, in the way of a man who has seen enough variation in human behavior that very little surprises him anymore. I told him what I knew. I read him the letter. I told him the access log dates. He was quiet for a moment. Do you have documentation of what credentials you gave Cassie, and what section you authorized? He said. I have the text exchange. I said, I told her the portal login was for Medicare coordination and insurance claims. That text exchange is important, he said. Hold on to it. She used those credentials to access the life insurance section, I said. That's a separate area of the portal. I understand, Calvin said. He was already writing something. Jerry, what I need you to do right now is call Keystone and request the full access log for your account. Dates, times, IP addresses for every login, What pages were visited? Requested in writing. I'll follow up with a formal letter from my office. And the beneficiary change. I'll file a reversal request today as the account holder's attorney. The change was made without your authorization. You gave access to a specific section, not blanket account authority. That's a meaningful distinction. He paused. I'm also going to contact the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. What Cassie did has a name, Jerry. What's the name? I said. Insurance fraud, he said. Specifically unauthorized modification of a life insurance policy with intent to misappropriate benefit proceeds. I sat with that for a moment. She's my daughter, I said. I know, Calvin said. That doesn't change what it is. I called Russell that same evening. He was in the living room. He'd stayed another 3 days, driving back to East Nashville each morning for work, and coming back each evening, which I hadn't asked him to do, and which I appreciated in the way you appreciate something too much to say it plainly. I showed him the letter. He read it standing up. He read it the way I had. Once, then again, then a third time, with the same stillness that precedes a specific kind of understanding. November 14th, he said. 4 days before, I said. He set the letter on the coffee table. She visited you in recovery, he said. Yes, she called last week to check how you were doing. Yes. He didn't say anything for a moment. Hector was asleep on the couch beside him, undisturbed. Russell looked at the letter. Does she know you know? He said. Not yet, I said. He nodded once. Calvin's handling the reversal, he said. As of this morning, another silence. Dad, he said. It's $750,000, I know. She did this 4 days before your surgery, I know. He reached over and picked up the letter again, not to read it, just to hold it for a moment, before putting it back down. Okay, he said. What do you need from me? That question. The simplicity of it. One child asked what she could take. The other asked what I needed. Beverly would have recognized it, as the difference between her 2 children made plain. Then Russell said one more thing, quietly, looking at the letter on the coffee table. She had no right to count you out before you were gone. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. I called Cassie on a Saturday morning. 10 days after I received the letter, Calvin had the reversal confirmed, the access log documented, and a formal letter sent to the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. I was not calling to surprise her. I was calling because she needed to hear it from me, before she heard it from anyone else. She answered on the second ring, asked how I was feeling, whether I was sleeping better, whether the incision was healing cleanly. I let her finish. Then I said, Cassie, I need to ask you about something. Of course, she said. The Keystone portal, the login I gave you in October. A pause, very brief. Sure, what about it? I received a confirmation letter from Keystone on November 22nd. It confirmed a beneficiary change on my life insurance policy. Effective November 14th. Silence. The change removed your brother and listed you as sole primary beneficiary at 100%, I said. The change was made from my account at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday. A longer silence. Dad, I'm not asking if you did it, I said. I have the access log. I'm asking you to explain to me what you were thinking. The silence that followed was not a gathering silence, a person deciding how to respond. It was the silence of a story collapsing before it could be told. We've been underwater, she said finally. Her voice had changed, lower, flattened. Todd's portfolio took a hit this year. We're behind on the second mortgage. It wasn't forever. I was going to fix it. Fix it, I said, after things stabilized. I was going to change it back. After what stabilized, Cassie? She didn't answer. After I was safely through surgery, I said. Or after I wasn't. She didn't answer that. I know you did, I said. And I hope that's true, but you still changed that policy. 4 days before I went under general anesthesia. You changed it to yourself and you said nothing. She started crying. Dad, we're desperate. You don't know what it's been like. I would have helped you, I said. If you had come to me and told me you were struggling, I would have helped you. You know that." She didn't say anything. Instead, you prepared for my absence. You logged into my account and moved $750,000 to your name while I was 4 days from surgery. The crying continued. "I waited. Calvin filed the reversal 3 days ago," I said. "The Department of Commerce and Insurance has an open file. I don't control where that goes from here. You reported me?" Her voice shifted. Shock, and underneath the shock something harder. "I told my attorney what happened to my policy," I said. "He did what attorneys do. Dad, I'm your daughter. You were also the person with access to my accounts," I said. "That matters too." I ended the call. 3 hours later, Todd called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message. Steady voice, measured words, the tone of a man in commercial lending who has rehearsed how to sound reasonable under pressure. He said Cassie was devastated. He said the situation had been mischaracterized. He said the family had been under significant financial strain and that Cassie's intentions had been misunderstood. He said he hoped we could handle this as a family. I called Calvin and played him the voicemail. Calvin said, "Don't respond." I didn't. Calvin's subsequent investigation, requested as part of the insurance complaint documentation, found that Todd had been aware of the beneficiary change before it was made. A text exchange between him and Cassie, provided to the Department of Commerce and Insurance during the inquiry, included this message from Todd, sent the evening of November 13th, "Do it tonight, before he starts thinking about everything ahead of surgery." That's the window. That was the window. He had used that phrase. That word. The same word Cassie had used in a text to a friend 2 weeks earlier, recovered in the same documentation request. "Todd thinks we have a window with Dad's surgery. I hate this, but we're out of options." She had hated it. She had done it anyway. The Department of Commerce and Insurance also requested Todd's employment records as part of the inquiry. His firm, a regional commercial lending company based in Franklin, opened an internal compliance review when notified of the investigation. Commercial lenders have conduct clauses. Calvin confirmed in March that Todd had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of that review. He had said, "That's the window." The window closed differently than he'd planned. The Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance completed its review in February. They formally determined that the beneficiary change constituted unauthorized account modification with intent to misappropriate insurance proceeds. The matter was referred to the Tennessee Attorney General. In April, the AG's office issued formal criminal charges against Cassie for insurance fraud under Tennessee Code Section 5653-111. Todd was named as a co-conspirator in the charging document. His name appeared in the court filing attached to the fraud indictment, a public record, available to anyone who searched it. His administrative leave became termination the week the charges were filed. His firm's regional director confirmed it to Calvin's office in writing, citing conduct clauses in his employment agreement. Calvin confirmed this through public court records. The beneficiary on my policy reads as it did before November 14th, $375,000 to Cassie, $375,000 to Russell. I have since spoken with Calvin about modifying that further. He has advised me to wait until sentencing. I am waiting. Todd and Cassie listed their Brentwood house in January. They moved to a rental in Murfreesboro. The arraignment was held at Davidson County Criminal Court on a Tuesday in May. I attended. Calvin sat beside me in the gallery. The room was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent light, the kind of room where ordinary things become permanent. Cassie came in with a private defense attorney. Todd came separately, with his own counsel. They sat at different tables and did not look at each other. The judge read the charges aloud. Insurance fraud. Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. His voice was flat and procedural, the way a voice gets when it has read the same language too many times to feel it. I felt it. I watched Cassie the entire time. She never once looked at me. Both entered not guilty pleas. The defense attorney for Cassie spoke briefly about her family ties to the community. The judge set a pretrial hearing and adjourned. Cassie walked out past the gallery. She was 4 feet from where I was sitting. She never once looked at me. There was a brief mention in the Nashville Business Journal's court filings column 2 days later. Todd's name appeared alongside hers. His former employer confirmed to a reporter that he was no longer with their organization. I did not need to attend. I went anyway. I have not spoken to Cassie since the phone call. I have not spoken to Todd at all. The week the formal charges were filed, I opened the family sharing app on my phone to look at photographs of my grandchildren. The screen said I didn't have access. I closed the app and opened it again. Same message. I tried a third time the following morning. The photographs were gone. Russell called me that Thursday evening. He said, "I know, Dad." That was the moment I understood that this was not desperation. Desperation doesn't remove a grandfather from his grandchildren's photographs the week criminal charges are filed. That is something else. That is a woman who even at the end is still calculating. Beverly would have known what to do about the grandchildren. She would have found a way. I am still working on that part. Russell came for Christmas. He brought April and Hector. We had the kind of Christmas that fills a house differently than usual. Noisier in some ways, quieter in the ways that come from one absence and one deliberate distance. After dinner, Russell stayed at the table while April cleared dishes, and Hector investigated the base of the Christmas tree. We didn't talk about Cassie directly. We talked around it the way you talk around a structural problem you've identified, but haven't yet resolved. You know where it is, you know what it will require, and you're not ready to begin until you've finished thinking. You okay? Russell said. Getting there, I said. She made a calculation, he said. It wasn't accusatory, just the observed fact of it. She was in trouble, I said. And she looked at me and she saw a resource instead of her father. Russell was quiet. That's the part I sit with, I said. Not the money, not even the surgery timing. The part where she looked at me and made a calculation. I didn't say the next part out loud. I'll say it here. There was a night maybe 2 weeks after I found the letter, when I sat in the recliner at 2 in the morning, and I couldn't stop thinking about the recovery room, November 19th. Cassie standing at the foot of the bed, asking if I was hurting, adjusting the blanket. She had changed the policy 5 days before that. I sat with that at 2 in the morning, and I didn't have a name for what I felt. I still don't. He nodded. 38 years building things, I said. You learn to read a structure. Where the weight is, where it shifts, where it fails. I poured the last of the coffee. She wasn't wrong that I had money, I said. She was wrong about what it meant that I had it. Beverly used to say, love is proved in the small choices, not the big gestures. Those are easy. The small ones, the ones nobody sees. A Thursday evening in November, 9:47 p.m. A login to a portal I gave her for one purpose. A navigation to a page I didn't authorize. A change made in the dark, while I was 4 days from surgery, and my wife had been dead for 22 months. That was the small choice. I recovered from the surgery. The sternum is healed. The incision is a clean line now, already fading. I am slower than I was. That's honest, but I am here. The policy says what I said it should say. She thought she was calculating risk. She forgot I spent 38 years building things that had to hold weight. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. There are more like it here. Stories about trust, family, and what happens when someone miscalculates. And if this hit close to home, let me know in the comments.